welcome to the Momversation Club, the podcast born out of the idea that every mum needs a tribe. I'm Claire Strong.
And I'm Christina Struckmeyer. We are two moms just like you, navigating the chaotic, challenging, and often isolating world of motherhood.
Now, it's said that it takes a village to raise a child, but we want to know, where the F is that village?
It's a question that resonates with so many of us who find ourselves raising children, managing careers, and trying to maintain our own identities, often with a sense of isolation.
Yep, it's a lot, but we're here to remind you that you're not alone. The Momversation Club is your village, a place where you feel valued, appreciated, and understood.
We believe that by sharing our own experiences, successes, and struggles, we can create a virtual village for all you amazing moms out there.
So join us every week for a real, raw, and relatable discussion about all aspects of being a mom, including the stuff you just can't talk about with anyone else.
So if you've ever asked yourself, where the F is the village? Well, you found your tribe. So let's get into it.
Hi, Christina.
Hey, Claire. How are you?
I am good. How's it going?
We're doing okay. A little bit of a rough start this morning. I was sharing that as I put my headphones on just a minute ago, I whacked myself in the face.
Oh my God.
My daughter ran into a bookshelf. The other one was upset about the weather. I think the words are, I don't like different weather. And I was like, same girl, same. So, we're getting on to get on over here. How about you?
You had quite the morning. Yeah, I've got one at home sick and one at school, which seems to be invariably my life at the minute. To have both of them in school is like a total achievement. So, but aside from that, everything's pretty good my end too.
Oh my goodness. Well, I am excited about today's topic. I know we have been meaning to talk about this for a while, and it's nice to get around to it.
This is a big one, actually. This is a big one.
Yeah. So why don't you tell the people, what are we talking about today, Claire?
Okay, so we're talking about social media, and in particular, how that relates to our kids. And the interesting thing about our conversation today is that I have teenagers. I have a 13-year-old and a 15-year-old. So I am now in full social media swing. So they have access to social media. They're on it a lot. And you've got little, so you haven't experienced this yet from a parenting point of view.
No.
So, I guess first things first, the step one for me was when to give my kids a phone. So for me, what that looked like was age 13. So that was actually pretty late, honestly, Christina, compared to their peers. They were the last out of all their friends to get a phone. But I had it in my head that, 13 was the age that I was going to hold out until. And so I did. So both of them couldn't have a phone until their 13th birthday. And at that point, most of their friends had a phone for a couple of years, some of them even longer than that.
Yeah.
And they were already on social media as well by that age.
Yeah. Well, like you mentioned, I don't have a child in the game right now, that's in the social media. And so I did some research on this, and actually you're actually 100% correct about their peers, because according to Common Sense Media, and this is a report from 2023, 42% of kids have a phone by age 10.
Wow.
And then by age 12, it jumps to 71%. And then by 14, it's 91%, which is basically everyone. So 13 is right in the middle of that. Talk to me about 13. Why did you decide that was the age? What were some parameters you had about that?
I just thought, so by 13, they're in middle school. And so I thought, it's kind of a bit of I don't know if coming of age is the right thing to use, but, I didn't want them having phones in elementary school. I just thought it was inappropriate. Well, there's no need for it. I was picking them up. It's not like they were walking anywhere on their own. They didn't need it for those reasons. And I knew that the second I gave them a phone, they would be addicted to their phone. It's just very difficult to, even if you have restrictions in place with usage, whenever they have the phone, they are engrossed in their phone. And I've spoken to therapists about this, and this is not a my kid thing. This is all kids everywhere. And so in my head, I thought 13, that puts them at middle school. So we've got past elementary school, where I didn't think it was necessary for them to have a phone. And then, 13, they're teenagers. So they're kind of, transitioning a little bit into being an older child. And so, so that's why I thought 13. Honestly, I ideally I would have held out for longer, but I'll be honest, the pressure to give your kids a phone is enormous because all their friends have them and they feel like they're the odd one out, and that, it's so lame that they haven't got one, and their friends can't understand why they don't, and they feel left out. Because the other thing to
Hmm.
say, some moms listening to this might be like, oh, for God's sake, just tell them they're not having a phone. But when I spoke to a therapist about this, I wanted to get their take on it. She said something really interesting to me. She said, when it comes to discipline and teenagers and their phones, she said for particularly a teenager who is suffering depression or anxiety, and friends are their outlet, and obviously the kids are communicating with their friends via the phone. That's how a lot of the time they are hanging out with friends. It's via their phone. And she actually said one of the worst things you can do is take the phone off them for punishment reasons, because a lifeline to them, because they communicate all the time through their phones to their friends. And so if you take that away from them and they may be in a vulnerable state, you're cutting off their communication, and that could be, potentially disastrous. So yeah, so circling back to the age thing,
Yeah.
13 was I stood fast and firm. I mean, my younger daughter, because my eldest had already got a phone by, at 13, she was like, Mom, can you bring it forward a little bit for me, because I'm going to England in the summer, and I really want to talk to you, and so can I have it in the summer instead of waiting for middle school? And I did hold firm, so I'm pretty pleased with that. But in the same breath, the second that you get them a phone, Christina, it's like they've had one for 10 years anyway. It's like, why was I holding it? I mean, really, it's
Well,
just like all that good work's just gone up in smoke in an instant.
did you like because I know a lot of parents and it's changed over the years because things
Mm.
have changed all the time with different
Yes.
technologies. But back 3-4 years ago when I was talking about this the first time with my friends, there were phones that you could get your children that would just do certain things like call or text, and they didn't have like the internet access like a full iPhone would. Did you think about doing that, or did you go straight iPhone? Like, how did that look?
We
Or,
went straight.
iPhone, but, like it's normal
Yeah,
phone, like
smartphone.
Samsung
Yeah, yeah,
iPhone,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, we went and just got them a phone. Honestly, it wasn't the top.
Yeah.
They didn't get the latest iPhone. They both have iPhones, but they're not the latest iPhones. Their
Yeah.
friends have them. I didn't think that was necessary. But yeah, they have internet access on as well. The other thing I will say to you is, especially during COVID, they still do now. They do use their phones. Particularly my eldest, she will use it for schoolwork.
Yeah,
So,
they do use it for a lot of
this
things.
they do. She scans stuff on it, and that's
Yeah.
work that she's turning in, especially in COVID, during COVID, and that was the first time she got a phone basically, and particularly during that time, she would on a daily basis be asking to use my phone to scan work, until she got her own phone. So it's yeah, I didn't give them the stripped down version. I see all the benefits of doing that. I just you know,
It's a
you
choice.
kind of
My niece has a
it's
regular
difficult.
phone, and I think there
Okay.
was discussions about whether or not to do that, but then there's certain apps that aren't available on those phones that they want to use for school and different things. So it's
Yeah.
it's definitely an option. It's funny that your therapist, I mean, not funny, but it's interesting that your
Yes.
therapist had said
Yeah.
that because, you and I grew up in the age of the internet. Like, we were
Yeah.
coming up as the internet was
Yeah.
coming up.
Sure. Yes.
And we had the beginnings of social media on my side, at least, because I
Mhm.
graduated 2006 of high school. And
Yeah.
so we had like MySpace and Facebook, and we had like the things. It isn't at the level it is now, but
Mm.
we had those things. And I remember it being like this thing you also did on top of your social interactions you had in person. And I've watched it evolve to almost like my youngest brother, he's 10 years younger than me. And when he was in high school, 5, 6 years ago, even, it was how they hung out. Like you said, like
Mm.
they wouldn't hang out in person. They would just
Mm.
be like on some sort of thing together, or like a
Yeah.
live stream, or like we're all playing games online and talking to each other in that way. They're not like physically hanging out as much.
Yeah, I mean, so my girls are pretty social, so they do hang out. It's not that, so my girls don't just stay in their room on the phone and never socialize with their friends. They are very
Yeah.
social girls. But certainly during COVID, that was the only way they were able to keep in contact with their friends. And so I do
Yeah.
think that that's had a big impact and a lasting impact, really, on, that theme where they don't need to physically be in each other's presence to hang out.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean, the other thing I will say is I think it's a very personal thing. This is I don't think we should be going around shaming each other, shaming parents who have maybe made a different decision to you. I think you need to make a decision based on your child. I mean, if you have a child that is particularly vulnerable for some reason, then you may want to have more oversight,
Yeah.
and more restrictions, because it is a dangerous place out there. The internet is a
Yeah.
dangerous place. These apps, it can be very easy for kids to be communicating with people who are just, pedophiles, frankly, people that
Yeah,
you
no,
don't want your kids
privacy,
to be.
safety, mental health. There's so many concerns when it comes to social media.
Yeah.
Um,
The other
yeah.
thing, just to while it's on my mind, it's not just, so when we talk about like predators, I'm not just talking about guys in their 50s who are preying on children. There are a lot of teenagers, particularly teenage boys. I've obviously got two girls. There are a lot of stories I've heard my girls tell me about teenage boys that they either know or, know through other friends, and they they've been asking girls to send them explicit photos. And for me, I'm not saying it's always boys doing this, but I'm hearing this from my girls. And so what shocked me there is that it's not these, 50-odd-year-old pedophiles. We're talking about other kids that are asking for nudes. They're asking for all of this. And it's they're 13, they're 15. And so I'm surprised at that, just because I would have thought that, like, the education and the knowledge and the awareness that these kids are taught at school and that us as parents should be teaching them. I'm just surprised that hasn't permeated and that that's still a
Well,
thing,
the
but it
thing about
is.
it though, Claire, is that was a thing back even when I was in high school. I mean,
Yeah,
the thing about it is they're children, okay? And
yeah,
their frontal
yeah,
lobes aren't developed. They're not
sure.
making decisions that adults would. They're not thinking of consequences or like this might be passed around to other people or might be going on the internet later. Usually it's just validation. Like they're just seeking some dopamine and some validation. I mean, when I was younger, I was 15 or 16, I sent a picture to a boy. Now, I was smart back then, and I only sent the picture of my butt. There was no identification features. I was making sure my face wasn't in it, so that way I could be like, it wasn't me. But I took a picture of my butt and like this bathing suit bottom and like this cute little skirt, and it was flirty and sexy. And I was seeking validation. It was like a popular boy in
Yeah.
high school. And I remember, like, literally years later, I found out he had told a lot of people and shared that picture around. And it wasn't until I was like a
uh,
senior, I was like a sophomore when that happened, that I had found that out. And so, really, when you're sending a picture, like, you kind of have to think about this might be going to everyone. My mom might see this. My grandma might see this. You have to think about that. And that's not what a girl thinks when they're being, prospected for this. They're just going, oh, he might like me more if I send this. And that is a conversation you need to have with your daughter, but also making sure you're monitoring stuff because their brains are not they're not what they need to be at that age.
Yeah, and I think that's the dangerous combination. The fact that, as you've said, their brains aren't developed. So
No.
the risk element of the brain is not fully developed. And so,
Mm-mm.
they've got these powerful devices in their hands that can cause potentially a lot of trouble for them. And they are not able to process and show restraint in a way that an adult probably would. I mean, an
Yeah.
example is when my eldest daughter first got her phone, I did actually have to take it off her for a week, because she'd sent some texts that were just, you could see that she'd got into got into an argument with a boy, and her point was valid. The point that she was making was actually very, very valid, but because she was 13 at the time, she just texted without thinking it through. So the text that the boy received was kind of like the explosive version of what should have been sent. And that's
Mm.
because in that second, she thought, this is outrageous. I'm going to tell you what I think of you. And although, like I say, I actually stood by her,
You're like,
her comments
valid,
to it.
but
Yes, I stood by her, the reason behind it. But I was like, geez, you can't, come
yeah,
on, you can't send that. And it's because she'd not been able to process her reaction in time before she sent the text. And that's an example of how dangerous I think social media can be
yeah.
with young kids and teenagers
What's
because they're
impulsive?
not developed. They're totally impulsive. Yeah.
And the things
Yeah.
that I think were firewalls for us growing up, I mean,
Mhm.
to post a picture, you had to have one taken a picture, right? And then you had
Yeah.
to have either developed it or used a digital camera and plugged in your camera to your laptop or computer and like
It was
wait for it to
work.
download. If you wanted to send a sexy picture, you had thought about it, okay?
Yeah.
But
Oh
now,
yeah.
like, you can rat off a text, you can rat off whatever online, and it takes 2 seconds. You can record things that are happening in the world. You can have strong opinions about things that are completely incorrect. And it's hard because if something goes viral, that's on the internet forever. And I shudder to think the things that I thought were so valid at 14, 15, if that had been like associated with my name for forever. Thankfully, I got to be stupid like in the dark, you know?
Oh,
Because
I'm
I
so
was
thankful for
not
that.
like,
Seriously. Good
yeah.
Lord. I dread to think if we'd have had smartphones and social media as we are, like back in the day. God knows.
So
Um,
your girls got social. Did they get it around the time they got their phone, or did you hold off on that? Like, how did that look?
okay. So obviously having a smartphone is one thing, social media is another thing. So they're not on Facebook. Facebook, I don't think they're kind of
The
really
kids
into. It's
don't
not
do
their
Facebook,
thing.
Claire.
They're like, why are you on Facebook? It's so old. So they don't do Facebook. So the social media that my kids use are TikTok and Snapchat.
Mm.
They're the two. They're not even so bothered about Instagram. It seems to be TikTok and Snapchat. Now, two of the worst.
I
um,
was just gonna say, Claire, those are
yeah,
rough. Those are the
I know.
two, though. That's true. It's
They
true.
are, they are, and those are the two. And so I didn't allow them to have social media accounts initially, but by the time, I mean, certainly by the time my eldest was 14, she'd got them. And then what you set for your eldest sometimes kind of it gets diluted a bit by the time the second one comes along because you've you've lost the will a little bit. So my youngest, she's 13. She does have Snapchat and she does have TikTok. All the friends are on TikTok and they all have Snapchat. So my girls do have those apps. Um, that said, I try my best to ensure that they are savvy when they post stuff. I mean, it doesn't always happen. I mean, some of the stuff that my 15-year-old posts, for example, they're dancers that they're watching other girls, do, and then their outfits can be a little suggestive. And so I think she's actually getting a little more mature with that, in as much as she'll say to me, Mum, what do you think to this video? And so I do. The rule is, now, not that it's always followed, but if she's posting something that could be a little suggestive, that she needs to just run it past me and I'll give her my opinion. Maybe it may not be necessarily the dance that she's doing, but it could be the top she's wearing is just a little low cut and she's only very young. And so but it's tough. I mean, I don't have the answer. I listen, I've sat through seminars and workshops by, experts that are there to help parents navigate this. And it's great. And there's a lot of great information out there. Don't feel as a parent that you are on your own with this. We're all going through it, especially if you've got teenagers. But aside from literally not allowing them to have a phone or to only get them a flip phone or a phone that's stripped down,
Yeah.
we're gonna have to navigate this. The other thing is, if I were to ban my girls from, having a smartphone or having a TikTok account, they're not idiots. they're very clever. I could get them to
Yeah.
delete an account. They'll have another account that I don't
Yeah.
know about. And they'll be,
Yes.
and then they'll be, I know, because, my girls have got friends, particularly my younger one, whose parents have banned them from, let's say, TikTok because for a punishment, let's say, because they've, done something in the home or whatever. And, my youngest daughter will say, that girl, she's always wanting she'll say, oh, let me use your phone a second. I need to check TikTok. So they're going to be on there. They're
They're going to be
very,
on there no
very,
matter what.
they're very persistent. They're very persistent. And so
Yeah.
for me, banning it wasn't an option because I just didn't think it was reasonable, and I didn't think it was sustainable. And so I'm trying to take the other approach, where they know that they should be sensible and they know what the rules are. I don't say that they follow them all the time, particularly my older one, but it's just, yeah, it's a work in progress. I don't have all the answers, Christina. I know I'm just in the middle
Yeah.
of it all.
Well, we focused in on a lot on this conversation about what they're posting, right? And
Mm,
I again data, but like kidshealth.org has this acronym WWGS. What would grandma say? And it's
yeah.
kind of a rule to teach kids that when they're sharing on social media, that their teachers, their admission officers, future bosses, like people will see this later on. The internet, if some things are forever, some things aren't. Like I remember people back in the day were like, well, what you post on MySpace will always be around. I'm like, I wish I could go back to my MySpace. I don't know where it is. But
Oh God.
something could be screenshotted, something can go viral, and it,
Yes.
it follows you around. But the other thing to think about is like the monitoring, right? So your kids have TikTok, you're watching what they're posting, but there's also things coming in. And that's the thing that really scares me as a mom right now is my kids are very little. And so by the time they get social, things are going to be even more intense. Like who the hell knows, right?
Hmm.
And I worry about specifically like I love TikTok. It's like one of my favorite things. It's taught me so much. My specific algorithm gives me a lot of helpful content, a lot of therapy talk, a lot of like mom tips. But every single algorithm is different and it's
Yes.
based on what you show interest in. And that's the same for all the socials. So my experience on an app might be very different than the person next to me. And I worry about what my kids might see. I mean, I grew up at a time where they were starting to release really scary things related to the war on YouTube. And you could find really graphic content on YouTube at the time. And people would send that around. And it's like your brain can't even process what you're watching on the screen. And there's stuff like that all over TikTok too. Things that are really, as an adult, disturbing to me that takes me, a day or two to shake off is coming at these young kids too. So that's hard to monitor. Like I there's tools, like there's an app called Bark that I saw online that monitors like social networks and YouTube and email and text messages. And it not only for harmful content, sexual content, but also like threats of violence or mental health issues, suicide, that kind of stuff. And it'll email you, but it can't control what the algorithm shoots at you on these apps. You're
So,
kind of
but
up for it, like the wild, wild west with
totally,
the internet.
totally. And so Bark, there are other apps out there too, but Bark is a good example of a tool that is out there for parents. And I haven't used Bark. It's been on my radar for a while. I mean, it's not to say I wouldn't implement it because I do think what it's doing is great. But what I would say is the key for me is having an open dialogue with your kids.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
the thing is, if they think you are going to absolutely blow up and overreact, they're not going to share stuff with you. And I think the only, apart from literally basically trolling them and checking every 3 minutes what they've posted or what they've been looking at, which is, look, I mean, it's unrealistic. It's
You can't.
impossible to do. You can't do
It's a
that.
full-time job.
So then what's the plan B? The plan B is that you need to make sure that they feel able and open to talk to you about stuff. And it might be stuff that, inside you want to hit the roof about, or you want to just, you do feel like your initial reaction would be to like scream at them or to, have a very, swift, decisive, reaction. But my advice would be, and I'm learning this all the time, but it works. Try and take a deep breath, because whatever it is they're telling you, it may not be something you necessarily want to hear, but they are telling you. And it's so much better for you to know than for you to not know some of these things, because then at least, there is that transparency. And, my eldest, for example, she will come to me when she does get inappropriate messages from guys. But she tells me about them
Mm.
because she feels able to. Now, if I were to fly off the handle every time, and I'd be like, well, this is outrageous, and you can't wear that type of clothes, it's because you're right. If I went off like that, she'd never tell me this stuff again. So at least I have a heads up of what's going on, because I'm trying to be as open, like an approachable person, basically, with the kids. So that would be my top tip right now to parents
Yeah.
that maybe are introduced to this for the first time. They're starting this journey, or like me, you're like in the throes of it. Just try and be approachable, because that will, I'm absolutely guaranteed to you, that will help safeguard your kid at the end of the day. The other thing I want to touch upon, it's not just predators that you need to be careful of. Bullying is so
Yeah.
prevalent. I mean, my eldest has had a really rough time at high school, but a lot of the bullying is done online. A lot of the bullying is done on Snapchat, for example, or TikTok. And because it's out there, people that are nothing to do with the situation can see and can comment. So, an issue that you have with one person, it's not just that one person when it moves on to social media. It's that person plus, another couple of thousand, because,
Oh, yeah.
someone's friends with so and so. And so very quickly, everyone knows your business. And if you're, being the subject of bullying, that can be absolutely devastating to your mental health. So that's something that we have been dealing with. And that's a really nasty side to all of this. Again, it goes back to the fact that we're dealing with kids. And so
Well, and
even,
also adults, Claire. Like, I
well,
cannot
yes,
tell you
yes, yeah,
how many
totally.
times
Yeah.
on social media I'll see comments that are just cruel. Like, why would you say that? Like, let's all
Mm.
take a deep breath and think about what we say. Is it useful? Is it helpful? Like, why are you so mean? I would never choose to just go off on someone and be mean for no reason. It puzzles my mind how I see some of this stuff. And also, people take one snippet of something and like really go rogue with it. I recently saw a TikTok, a mom was being bullied. So she posted something about the rules that she has with her big family. She's a family of 6. And
Hmm.
all the comments were about how selfish she was and how horrible of a mother she was because she couldn't spend all that time individually with those kids. They must be raising each other. Come to find out, after everything died down, she did a video. 3 of the kids are actually her sister who passed. She
Oh,
took them in.
wow.
So
Wow.
she has a big family because she took in those children. Not to say that people who have big families should be bullied, but like, you don't know all of the information. And the internet is this place where if one person has a negative thought, people pile on. And when you think about that with our kids and like the fact that they don't have even the adult brains we have, and the adults are being like that, what are the teens like, And I remember during the bully years being able to just leave school and no one was following me to come home and tell me what an idiot and like how chunky I was and all this stuff I was. It was silent. It was just my family. And nowadays, these kids come home after maybe having some issues at school and they've got Snapchat messages and they've got TikToks maybe about them, or, things that are hinting toward like being shady towards them. It never ends for them. Like, it's just constant.
Well, we had a real life example of that. It was my eldest daughter's birthday last year, and we'd gone out for the day for her birthday, and she had gone on to, I think it was Snapchat, and she had got someone had posted a happy birthday message. Maybe it was TikTok. I don't know. It was one of them, but someone had posted a happy birthday message, been genuine and nice. And then these bullies who were bullying her at school had seen it, and they started being really nasty, and it ruined her birthday. It ruined her day, to the point where she actually like fainted. And so she just collapsed because under the stress. And so that is an example of how, especially in the hands of kids whose brains are not developed,
Yeah.
social media can be really dangerous. And so, I've done a lot of work as well to build up my daughter's self-confidence so that she can, something like that isn't going to affect her in that way anymore. That, okay, so, I've had this frank conversation with her. So if you're going to stay on these apps, if it is important to you because there are other benefits to being on these apps, you maybe learn about stuff, you enjoy looking at inspirations for your room, for example, or your wardrobe. I get that.
Yeah.
But if you're going to stay on there, then you need to be good emotionally, because if you're not in a good space emotionally, that's a very vulnerable place to put yourself in. So we've had that
Yeah.
conversation too, and I think she's actually handling all of this a lot better. But some would say the
Yeah.
easy option is to just take the phone away, or take the apps away. So like I say, I don't have
Well,
the
I mean,
answer.
again, if it's not that, it's this. If it's not this, it's that. Like they'll
Yeah,
find a way
yeah,
to get online. I think what you said earlier about just keeping the dialogue open, I think that
yes.
that's so helpful. And having a mom who or a parent who's leading the charge and being intentional with the way that they speak into their children about this topic. When I was younger, I had someone who was bullying me. Well, there was a lot of someones. I used to get bullied a lot, but that's why I'm so funny. but but no,
Oh,
I used to have a bully who was like a mean girl bully, like where they're bullies, but they're not like hitting you. They're just kind of like mean to you. And I
yes.
remember my mom did not handle that well. It was a lot of like, we should just punch her in the face. It wasn't like this conversation. And I think if an adult had come to me and been like, you know, I wonder what her life's like that she needs to do that. Like, I wonder, let's go deeper. Let's kind of understand this person on the other side and why they might be doing it to you. And what can you do to protect your mental health? And they had spoken to me like another adult and had that open dialogue like you have with your girls, would have been a
Mm,
very different perception of that. And so I think
mm,
having that open dialogue, if someone's like bothering you or saying mean things, tell me. If you see something disturbing, there's this really great tool that I encountered when I was looking into this called the Media Plan by the American Academy of Pediatrics, so the AAP. And they have kind of this like ongoing like list of things that you'll encounter with social media usage and like technology usage, things like teaching kindness and empathy, digital safety, screen time like limits, that kind of stuff. And each one talks about why you might implement it and like what types of tips you might want to do with your kids, and then also some talking points. And so I
mm.
think I'm gonna share that in the show notes so that if you're
Yes,
someone
please
who
do.
hasn't encountered social, or maybe you're looking to kind of look into it a little bit more, this might be a good tool. That being said, this is like if your child's like, yeah, yes, I would love to learn more tips. Like we got to live in the reality of it all, right?
Yeah, I think the
And
tips are
so
for us parents as much as anyone else. One other
it's a
thing I just want to
guideline.
touch upon, yeah, one other thing I want to just touch upon is, the use of phones at night and before bed.
Mm,
This is another issue that we parents, moms in particular, find ourselves monitoring all the time, because it's very easy. I mean, look, we do it ourselves. I'm guilty of it. I feel like sometimes it's rich me telling them to put the phones down before they go to bed when I'm like scrolling myself.
hmm.
Practice what you preach, I guess. um but you do need to watch out for that, because it's very feasible that they can be on their phones till the early hours of the morning.
Yeah.
And they've got school the next day. So I do make a point of, I go into their rooms before they go to bed. They actually, one thing I do like about the girls, I mean, I like a lot of things about my girls, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
one
One
one thing,
thing.
one thing, which I think is pretty mature of them actually. So they do have the phones in their room at night. So I haven't removed the phones, but they put things like ocean sounds on at night, and ASMR, things to help them go to sleep. So the phones are there and the phones are next to them, but that's what they're listening to. And so
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, they could do that on a laptop, I guess. It doesn't have to be on their phone, but so I think, I don't want to, God, touch wood, I don't want to speak too soon, but I think I feel like, we're heading in the right direction as a family unit with all of this. But geez, you've just got to be on your guard. You've got to be really vigilant as a parent.
Yeah, and you said something really really impactful just now where it's like you have to walk the walk, talk the talk as a parent. And I think that's really
Yeah.
important too. In our home, as these kids get bigger, ideally, I would love to have like some sort of charging station in the central area of our home where the phones go to live at a certain hour, including mom and dad. And like maybe
Okay.
we have them on do not disturb except for these specific numbers. That way, if there is an emergency, we get it. But otherwise, maybe at dinner we put them away. And maybe that's good for all of
Yeah.
our mental health. Maybe we need to start looking as parents at what we can do alongside them. So it's not a punishment. It's more like this is how we do things in this house.
Yes, and I think that's the clear distinction that needs to be made, because when you know, are threatening to take away phones because it's a punishment, that's very different to, you know, if you rephrase that and you say, you know, we're doing this because this is good for our mental health, that's different. So going back to what the therapist said to me during that conversation I had with her, she said that using phones as a punishment is counterproductive.
Yeah.
So I think that possibly is another great way to navigate this, framing, you know, limiting phone usage and social media usage as a mental health thing rather than a, you know, I'm the boss and you will not do this at this time, because teenagers, I promise you, will find a way to do it if they think they're being restricted some way.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm curious as how our audience handles this because this is really nuanced and it's really individual per family. Do you have a teen in your life? How do you handle phone usage, social media? When was your time that you decided to give it to them and why? All of the things. We'd love your feedback on that. And, this is a big topic. I think we'll come back to this topic more and kind of dive into some of the other pieces of it because it's just got many layers. So if you're someone who, specializes in anything like this and wants to be on the show, reach out to us, send us an email or a DM and let us know that you'd like to be involved in the conversation.
And that brings us to the end of another episode of the Momversation Club.
And if you've enjoyed today's show, which we hope you have, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review. Your support helps us reach even more moms and build a stronger village.
Until next time, bye.